Last time on BPO Night Live.
And would like to introduce you guys to Mr. Luke Maclean. Hi, Luke!
Hi!
Luke!
Hi everyone! How are you?
Welcome!
It's so
Thank you.
He sounds very British, guys.
And it's so nice to see you again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello!
So then, and I was very fortunate because after a couple of months of moving to London, I signed a publishing deal for the songs that I'd written with Universal Music. So, and they paid me very handsomely, which meant that I didn't need to work. Wow me. If only I was still there. When I was running the bars, we used to host parties where people like Kate Moss would come. We supported Ed Sheeran for a few gigs in his early part of his career.
Look, question.
Yep.
Can you tell us the first time that you've called, a call center and then someone picked up the call and they're not from the UK? Can you still remember?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I guess let's put it into some context to kind of start. So, like, I guess most of the people who will watch this are used to maybe dealing in US accounts, and that's mainly the main perception. And I guess to a certain extent in that kind of outsourcing kind of field, the UK is quite behind, really, with the US. But it did happen. But I think the first sort of revolution of that happening in the UK would have been sort of early 2000s, I would have said so. And most of that outsourcing went to India. The majority, you wouldn't come across so many Filipino systems. So there were a couple of companies that I would have to call to deal with. And I guess the biggest takeaway is, and what's helped me is with what I'm doing now, is those experiences. So the first thing I always tell anyone, never think that your customer wakes up in the morning and go, hey, great, I've got to call these guys today. That's amazing. I'm so excited. Like, it's a chore. It's something that people have to do. So in my experience, say my mobile phone company, they outsourced to India. So I guess it's a real tough one because people had a very negative experience when UK companies first started outsourcing. So, and I think even the Indian companies themselves, they didn't technically get it right. They used to give people like fake British names, and people's perception of that was like, your name isn't Michael Brown, is it? It's obviously not Michael Brown because you've got a very strong Southern Indian accent. So, so customers, there was a lack of trust. There was a lack of trust because, technically some of these companies were lying. They were giving people British names to make people feel more comfortable, but that wasn't the person you were talking to. So, you don't make that connection or you don't build that trust. And that was kind of one of my experiences, like, when I spoke to someone and I was like, that is not your name because, like, it's like James Tompkins. That's a very, very British name, but that person called himself James Tompkins. And then I guess the other major call out it's around people from other countries, and I learn every day on this. It's like what their perception of what good service is, or what British customers want, or what the experience that British people have, and what actually the reality is still quite a big gap. And like not necessarily that kind of formula that you can maybe use in a US account or whatever will necessarily work with British people, because culturally we're very, very different from Americans. I think the worst thing is that because we speak the same language, people just assume that we're the same, and we're really not. So I would guess overall the outsourcing opinion in the UK is very negative. And I know that you guys have worked on British accounts and you've had, you'll see that feedback come in, and or they don't speak English and comments like that, which is quite hurtful for people to receive. And generally it's not because there was that language barrier. It's actually that's a really misconstrued idea. And actually, the reason why they say that is because the way that interaction happened didn't suit that particular person. So when that person provides feedback or or whatever through whatever mechanism is available to them, they'll default to that, language barrier, this, and it's not. It's actually the cultural barrier. It's the understanding, what are the needs of that particular person. So, and with such a negative opinion of foreign call centers that is in the UK, I guess that makes the accounts that I work on and you guys have worked on in the past more challenging, because you're constantly trying to change someone's perception. You really are. So you're not starting here. You're starting back here, and it's your job to at least get there. That's normal, and then surpass their expectation, which is way more of a challenge, and a lot more difficult than people have. So yeah, I mean, that's just an overview of the way that British people feel about it. And there was a very distinct period in time in the early 2000s where you really noticed it. So my mobile phone provider, for example, like you call up, okay, English call center based outside of London, or I think they're based in Slough, which is just outside of London. English call center. Okay, we need to marginalize our budget, so what we're going to do? Okay, we're outsourced. And that transition, as a customer, if you've been calling up all the time, and then you notice that transition, and then you, because you get that negative perception that in general, the public will have, saying, oh, if I have to call a foreign call center, it takes too long, I have to wait, they don't understand what I want, yada, yada, yada. So, so that would be generally the kind of opinion and my experience. But of course, now, with my current experience, my perception is very different. That kind of lack of respect for kind of foreign call centers per se is now changed to an utmost respect, because I get to see day to day the challenges that people face, and the people that they deal with, and how they're listening in English, they're translating into their local dialect, they're thinking about what they have to say in their local dialect, then translating back into English, while typing on a keyboard, while dealing with 100 processes or whatever they have. So the radar for me has completely changed. It's like utmost respect, because that's really a challenge. I mean, look, I only speak one language. I speak a little bit of French, but mainly I only speak one language. These people need to be commended, right? They're dealing with people they're not culturally in line with, per se, talking in a language that's not their first language, but still doing a good job. So I always whenever I meet a new batch or we get new hires or whatever, the only comment I ever make when I talk about my team, I said, look, there's one rule with my team. Our job is to make your life easier. I
remember that. You always tell that to the batch. I remember when we would walk to a batch and then we would talk to them. I remember you saying that all the time.
And that's my fundamental rule. And it's a technique that people call a hook. It's a hook. It's how you hook people into wanting to work with you and do their best. Because at the end of the day, we all need help. All of us, everyone. I don't know everything about this industry. I don't know everything about training. I don't, even most of the cultural stuff. I'm in line with the cultural stuff, but sometimes I will have to use my best friend Google and find out. I remember one day we have this day after Christmas in the UK. It's called Boxing Day, and then one person said to me once, "What's Boxing Day?" And then I was like,
Boxing Day.
Yeah, I was like, very good point. I don't even know what it is. I've been celebrating it for 20, 30 years. I don't know what it's about. I don't actually. So yeah. So apparently, well, what I found out is because the rich people in the UK used to get their presents delivered on Christmas Day. I'm talking like Victorian times here, pre-1900s. And the guys who worked in the department store, they were called the boxers. So they would box up the gifts and then deliver them to the people. Yeah. So they didn't have a Christmas. Yeah, so they made a public holiday after Christmas so that the guys who worked in the department stores, the boxers, could have a Christmas celebration with their family. Hence why it's called Boxing Day.
Well, first of all, Luke, thank you so much for letting us know about that, because I worked with a UK account for nearly 9 years. But what I know about Boxing Day is the boxing, like Manny Pacquiao.
Yes.
Oh my God! Oh my God, thank you so much for that new knowledge about the history about it. So I've learned something new today.
You know, what I thought is that Boxing Day is just meant for you to unbox the gifts that you get. But now I know
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think we were all thinking. That's what we were all taught. So, but at least getting that information from you, knowing that there's a background behind it, like all the workers putting all the gifts in the boxes, and then they're given a day off after Christmas so that they can spend time with their families. I think that adds more value to having that additional holiday for the year for these guys who've been working really hard.
Exactly.
That is so useful. That is, in a cultural point of view. Now we get it. And then so now we've got more respect to the holiday, diba?
Yeah.
Kasi we don't have that here. Okay, I see.
And then I see that holiday in a new light now.
Yes.
There's something very noble about that holiday. It's not just a holiday, but there's something really good about it.
We've got so much respect for the people who've worked in the pre-current era who've been, boxes now. They're given an extra rest day. That's nice. And actually, like what Luke said about, it's not about the language. It's more about we don't understand where they're coming from because again, it just doesn't necessarily. The way we think does not sit in with the culture that they have. Like we don't know a lot of stuff in the UK. Like we don't know a lot of stuff in the UK. I think because primarily the Philippines is more attuned, I guess, with the US culture.
We're more Americanized.
Very Americanized. But look, you know what? Yeah, go ahead.
But we are no more on Korean.
K-pop.
Korean culture.
No, but remember, guys, in the 90s, it was all Japanese.
Yes.
Yes.
Anime.
Anime. And then when we transitioned, like early 2000s, now we're transitioning to Korean.
It's interesting, actually, you should say that, because I was having a conversation today with one of my team when we were coming back from our R&R, and it's because this lady walked by and then was like really, really staring at me, and then he said to me, "Oh, you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about." Right? So, and he was like, "Do you get that a lot?" And I was explaining, like, in Cebu, that when I first moved here, like 6 odd years ago. The first sort of year I was there, I really would. Like, even if you're in like a big mall or something like that, people would just really, really stare at you. But I think in Cebu, it's become a lot more culturally diverse now, and that kind of novelty of seeing someone and staring at them has kind of really gone away. You don't see it anymore now.
Yeah.
So they get used to it, foreign people seeing different kinds, different.
Yeah. Especially, I guess in Cebu as well, because Manila is a hub, isn't it? It's where generally when most people are traveling to the country, they will go, and then Cebu is somewhere they will go afterwards. It's kind of but you really that culture here in particular. I mean, I never really noticed it in Manila, but here that definitely has changed. It's not the people staring at you. Or like when I lived in the province where everyone called me Joe. I was like, who's Joe? Why is he so famous? This Joe guy.
Because he's American Joe. Like cup of Joe is very American, but So when we see a white person, you're sticking like a sore thumb and very Joe.
Well, I mean, like I lived in the province in southern Cebu for about 6 months. So I got the Hey Joe for the first months, and then like people were a bit sort of standoffish with me to start off with. But then after 2 or 3 months, like people come to our house, sit down, drink, talk with us, and stuff like that. So that kind of step back thing, the guard was dropped over time. And I think it's like once they get to know someone and they feel a bit more trust with people, then they generally will welcome you more into their kind of community as well.
It's true.
And it's not that different. It's not that different in the UK. If you were to go there and then move into some small village, at first you wouldn't feel part of the community. It's kind of up to you to be kind of proactive and talk to people and meet people for them to. And I mean, like any British culture, the first place you go to is the pub. If you go to the pub, you'll break into that community straight away. So I mean, that was kind of like, and I mean, I came straight to Cebu. So when I flew from the UAE, I came straight to Cebu. I arrived here. It was midnight on the dot, and I remember driving from Mactan at the time, and it's all dark. I can't see anything that's going on. I don't know. And then I just went to the apartment I rented at the time, and it was only the next morning. Like,
is this in City Light?
No, I was never fortunate. No, I honestly, there's a main road that heads towards Capital here in Cebu, where the governor's office is. It's called Escario. And then and I lived in a small apartment at the back of that kind of road, because at the time, you know, my partner was pregnant, so we didn't go to the province straight away because we needed to be near a hospital. So we're living there, and I remember then the next day, literally. So what happened is she came back home early from the UAE, and I stayed and worked there. And then so when I came probably, it was about 11 days before Layla was born, because in the UAE you have to be careful. If you break your contract all the time, they might not let you come back into the country again. And I didn't want to burn those bridges with, like, you know, not having that opportunity further down the line in my life if I wanted to have it. So I stayed. So yeah, I literally landed, and then the next morning was Hannah's second checkup. So straight into the middle of Cebu with all the noise and, you know, all the noise and traffic, and it was kind of a little bit overwhelming. And I remember I was stood by a 7-Eleven. We don't even have 7-Eleven in the UK, so that was a novelty as well. Stood by a 7-Eleven, looking up at the mountains, and those who have been to Cebu will know that, you know, basically Cebu is a strip that runs along the backside of a lot of mountains. Looking up, going, oh my God, I am really here. This is a real thing that's happening to me. And then that's only then. And then 10 days later, Layla was born. So new country, learning a new culture, and no job, all in one, and a new daughter, and a new father. Because Layla's my first child, all in one. So I don't know how I survived, to be honest. I think it was
good job.
What we say in the UK, it's a wing and a prayer, which is like, you know, you just you're constantly on the edge of between failure and success.
So, how do you say that?
A wing and a prayer. Now we have
a wing and a prayer.
A wing
and a prayer.
Yeah, it's like when you have you don't seem like you have a plan in life. You know, you just, I'll just have a go at doing something. Here we go. I'll just turn up here. You know,
a prayer.
Yeah.
It's like winging your flight.
Or winging it?
Yeah, winging it. It's kind of where winging it would have come from. Yeah, and definitely at that point of time, that was me ultimately winging it, as they would say. So.
Oh, you did. Yeah, you eventually did. Like after a few years, I think, or after a few months, you managed to land a job, right?
Yeah. And you know, I always see that point of that part of my life is that's where it could have gone one of two ways. Right, it could have got. I am where I am now, and I'm in a lucky place, and I'm very, very fortunate, and I don't forget that. But then, on the other hand, if I hadn't have got the job, where would I be? Because, you know, new child, new family, no money is not a very good equation. It's not one that works in people's favor.
I can relate. I was like in the same situation a few months back, and Luke knows it.
Yeah. and so, and how I got the job again was just pure luck to find out about it, I guess. So one of the financial clients that we still have and had at the time was associated with my stepmother. So when Layla was born, my stepmother was coming out to visit me because Layla was just born. So she was walking down the hallway in the offices of the said client, and one of the personnel there was the guy who managed it for the client here, and he saw her with the suntan lotion. So he said to her, "Oh, where are you going? You're going somewhere nice?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm off to Cebu to go and see my stepson. He's just had a kid." And then that person said, "Well, he isn't looking for a job, is he?" And she was like, "Yeah, absolutely. He really needs a job." And I guess the rest is kind of history. So then my current company, they call me up, and I went there. I was by the time the job interview and all that, or I got the green light to go and visit. Like, I was living in the province, so so the recruitment team here, they called me, said, "Oh, can you send us a CV?" Which I sent, and then they say, "Right, can you come to interview?" And I was so paranoid about being late because the roads in Cebu, there's literally one road going south. Yeah, so if there's an accident or something happens on that road, then you're not getting into the city. Yeah, it's the end of the road. You're not getting into the city and I mean, I lived about 3 hours south of Cebu, so I got up really, really early. I got up at 6 a.m. Came in. Of course, there was no problem. I actually arrived in 3 hours, so then I was wandering around the mall, getting more nervous because my interview was at 3 o'clock, but it was only I'd arrived in Cebu at 9 a.m. So I kind of, and then I still remember to this day. So I arrived outside the office, and I mean, I'm pointing because I live pretty much next door to the office, so I'm just pointing in the direction. And there was a little coffee shop called Brown Cup. So I was sat in there, legs shaking, arms shaking, because there was a lot riding on this.
Yeah.
I at the time I didn't know the industry as well as I know it now. And I was, I remember even before the interview, I had to Google what BPO meant because people don't call it that in the UK. And I remember I wrote a little note.
What is it called over there?
We just call it
Center.
Yeah, they just call it call centers. Yeah.
Call center.
Oh, call centers. So kaBEEP's call center for them. So for American, call center there.
Yeah. Yes. It's centaur.
Centaur.
Center.
Center.
I mean,
Call center.
And not to digress too much, it's sometimes that Americanism rubs off on Layla as well. So she'll be like, "Can you get me some water?" And I'm like,
Ooh.
I don't know what that means. And then she'll go, "Oh, sorry, can you get me some water?" I'm like, "Okay, then yes, I can have it."
British dad telling his daughter how to say water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because my mother is always commenting, "Oh God, her accent is so American." I'm like, "Oh, is it? Is it really that American?" Okay, let me do my best. So now we're on a strict. But in America, they're having different problems because their kids are all watching Peppa Pig, and all their kids are coming out with British accents.
Yes.
And kids are like sponges; they pick up things so quickly.
Yes.
We have to physically think about our accent and how we talk. Where kids will just I watch it and then just recreate it.
Yes.
I wish I still had a child's brain a little bit so I could retain more information. Anyway, I completely digress now. So yeah, I was waiting downstairs in Bang, and then I came up for the interview. And there's always an ongoing joke with the recruitment team here in Cebu. So I filled out the form, the 6 years or whatever it is that you have to put in. I'm trying to remember every start date and make sure it's accurate. It's a real challenge, especially with my memory. It's terrible. And then there's always an ongoing joke that I failed the initial voice assessment.
What?
Not because I can't talk in English, it's because the interviewer didn't understand what I was saying. So,
That's a laugh.
Oh my God.
Unfair.
For the recruiter.
It's too English.
For the
There's such
recruiter,
thing as too English for someone.
Yeah, I think the exact words. I don't know what this guy's saying. I don't know if he's any good or not because I don't understand what he's saying. Because I mean, as far as I knew, I just turned up to apply as an agent, and then this poor recruiter was just nosebleed and just looking. I've never been in an interview where the interviewer was more nervous than I was. She came in and she was shaking.
They probably got intimidated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's what we were trying to tell you. Like, we're so used to American people
accent, yeah.
Yeah, British people. So it's like, oh my god, this is so foreign for us. It's alien.
Alien enough that I failed the voice interview because my language, my accent was too like my accent. So, yeah. So yeah, and like I applied as an agent and stuff to start off with, and then the recruitment manager at the time. I mean, I'm not naming names, but we all know technically anyway.
Yeah.
So like he came to me and he was like, okay, like yeah, agree. English is your first language. If we put you on the phone taking calls, you probably have a distinct advantage. This and that. But rather than have one agent who's got English first language, why don't we look at taking your knowledge of culture, your knowledge of communication, and obviously like on my CV I had all that customer experience. Yes, it was food and beverage, but it's still how you deal with people and how you communicate with them. So let's see, and let's see what you can do. So I was like, okay, cool, that sounds good. Then followed like 6 other interviews for the same role. I got interviewed by everyone, people in India, people in the UK, people from the client, the country head at the time, everyone. Yeah. Oh, bearing in mind the country head at the time, I saw him last Sunday playing tennis in Cebu. I didn't realize he'd moved here.
Oh.
He said hello to me as well, which is kind of nice. And at the time I was trying to process like my like marriage credentials, so I had to go to Manila at that time. So this was like my second interview. I had to go to Manila because I had to go to the British Embassy, which I think is in McKinley Hill, if I'm correct.
Yes, it's there.
Yeah, and then do the affidavit thing, and then they kind of sign it for you, and then you can submit that to your local government. So at the same time, the Manila manager of recruitment said, "Oh, come over." So I was trying to get from McKinley Hill to Alabang, which is a very long way in traffic.
It is.
I think I even took the Sky. I even told the taxi driver, "Look, I'll just pay for the Skyway." So I had my second interview there, and that was my first kind of time going to the Manila office in Alabang. But I was literally in and out like really quickly. I went up to the recruitment level. And then the manager said, "Right, let's go for a coffee," and then we literally went back out. So I didn't get to meet you guys like at the time. There was no tour because they didn't know whether I was going to get the job or not. So yeah, so the same day I flew back to Cebu, and then I had my.
What? It was that quick?
Yeah.
I was there for like 2 days.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. I thought the day you went back.
No, not the
Like
same.
overnight.
No. God, no. Actually, that was kind of a weird trip because at the time, I had 2 friends from the UAE who had come to the Philippines on holiday because his wife is Colombian and he's South African. So like getting a visa, getting a country that doesn't need visa for both those nationalities to get into is like really, really difficult. So I went out around Makati with those guys the night before. So sitting up to the British Embassy, not feeling too fresh. Again, another very, very hot day. I'm surprised I got through it. Yeah, and then then I flew back to Cebu, and then I had like a couple of final interviews. One with the head of training for my company at the time, and then another one with the country head for the Philippines. So I always remember that last interview because I was in the boardroom here in Cebu, and then he was in the boardroom in Manila, and I was just sat there with the camera pointing at me, just like this, and yeah, but yeah, it is what it is. And I mean, for those interviews, I focused on what I knew, and what I mean by that is like I didn't try selling myself in a way that that wouldn't be achievable. I didn't make promises that I couldn't keep. So I focused and said, yeah, I've not worked in the BPO industry before, but I've been customer facing for 10 years or whatever. I've even managed bars that are customer facing, and the principles are still the same. It's all about the whole experience. When you run a venue or a bar or something like that, it becomes a bit more four-dimensional in the sense of it's the atmosphere, it's the smell, it's the taste, it's the body language of the people who serve you, it's how you're greeted when you come in, which is kind of all extra elements that necessarily we don't have. But we can learn something from food and beverage and bring it into the kind of BPO industry to help people. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the last couple of years. But I really didn't know anything about that industry. So after that, yeah, well done, you got the job. We just need your visa. So the 13A visa rigmarole, which I think I got the job in about August. I would have said it was about August 2015. But I didn't start until January 4th, 2016.
What the hell?
Because I had to wait that long for my visa to be processed. And I remember at the time, the company were calling me going, is it there? Is it there? And I was like, no, or I'm not sure how long we can wait. So it was really on a knife edge whether I was even going to get the job. And then, hey presto, the last batch. So if you go onto the immigration website, they publish a PDF and you click on it and you have to search through it to find your name. And then the last one before Christmas, boom, my name was on there. Big celebration. Yeah. And then they would just say, okay, let's just start on Monday the 4th of Jan. So I was like, okay, perfect. So I had time to sort of prep. I was still, what we say, rabbit in the headlights. I didn't know what to expect or what was going to happen. And when I say rabbit in the headlights, it's like, you imagine if you're driving down a road and there's a rabbit in the middle of the road and they're like, "Ugh!" Like that. That was kind of me.
That is so cute. Rabbit in the headlights.
Next time on BPO Night Live.
How do I get myself to a level where people trust what I say, trust my opinion? And I don't think advisors value themselves as much as I think they should do. They sit in I'm only an advisor, and I always think to myself, yeah, but you're the only reason why I get paid. But it is a challenge, and it definitely eats into my ability to manage my day.
Follow us for more BPO talks and tips on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BPO Night Live. You can watch us on our official Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. BPO Night Live is also heard as a podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast listening apps.